Tom Kenyon. He's leading the charge for the new Family First. Tom, good to have you back with us on Flow in 2022.
Thanks, Ricky. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. Now, let's just work through quickly a little bit of background here. There was a party called Family First. We did talk about it last year, but it's making a comeback of sorts, and it'll be running, lower house and upper house candidates, I gather.
Correct. Yeah, very similar in the same way. So, as you would know intimately, there was Family First got absorbed into Australian Conservatives or merged with the Australian Conservatives, and the name was retired. The underlying structure of that was retained, like the organisation stayed in existence. There's the organisation Family First Party stayed in existence, and then the company that owns the IP and everything was reinvigorated as well. So sort of the underlying structure is the same. A lot of the people who were involved previously are still involved and helping out where they can. But Jack and I and Deepa are all new faces to the party, that's sure. That's true.
Now, just those names you've dropped there, this is Jack Snelling and Deepa Matthew. Just give us a bit of background on them.
So Jack, many people would know Jack, so former member of the Labor Party, former minister, treasurer, health, and training, a few other things like that. He and I started to talk last year and decided to see if we could reform the Family First, which we were able to do. We were introduced to Deepa Matthew, who's a member of the Liberal Party, and she agreed to come across as well and join us. So the interesting thing about Deepa is Deepa actually ran for pre-selection in Newland. So had she been successful, she would have been the candidate against me in the 2018 election in Newland, and probably would have, was a good chance she would have won that seat, against me. So if not for losing that pre-selection, she wouldn't be here. It's quite ironic.
Yeah, so none of you continue to be members of those major parties, Labor and Liberal. You're now a member of this new Family First. Now, it's running candidates in how many lower house seats?
We'll target, and initially we'll target the 22, but we'll try and breach that out. Once we've got those 22 seats filled, then we'll go out into 47, as many as we can of the 47 across the state.
Yeah, so the 22 you mentioned, these are more marginal seats and largely metropolitan, I'm guessing?
Generally, the seats where we've done better, there'll be some of them will be marginal seats. The northeastern seats in Adelaide, for instance, the northeastern suburbs of the Adelaide metropolitan area, they are quite strong votes for Family First historically, so we'll obviously be out there. Some of the country areas that have had stronger Family First vote in the past. So we're targeting those seats that where we can have the most impact or we'll get the best vote, and then we'll branch out further as more candidates and volunteers become available.
Now, traditionally, the Family First business model, if I can call it that, is to try and get upper house MLCs elected, the likes of Andrew Evans, Dennis Hood, Rob Brokenshire. None of them are involved, by the way, I gather, with this make of Family First?
No, as you know, Dennis is now a member of the Liberal Party, and I think Robert's rejoined the Liberal Party as well, from what I understand. So they're not working with us, but the business model has been has primarily focused on getting someone elected to the upper house. That's not necessarily our focus. Actually, what we're more interested in shaping the Parliament and the people in Parliament. So every time you have one of those social issues, when you start talking about abortion and euthanasia, like they had a debate last year. The year before there was a debate on prostitution and legalising prostituting or deregulating prostitution. All of those votes are called conscience votes, which means the party doesn't decide how people will vote. People decide for themselves how they're going to vote. And so when you get those issues, those really big issues about life and death, what's important is the people who are actually in the Parliament, not what party they're from, or not what, not which faction they're part of in a major party or anything like that. That's of no concern. What does matter is what they believe on these things and how they think and how prepared they are to diverge from the majority view in their party. And so getting a good party getting a good parliament made up of 47 good, solid members of parliament is the single most important goal of rejuvenated Family First.
Well, we've seen in this, since, I guess, the demise of the last marker of Family First, we've seen this movement on the abortion law front, and there's been some protest rallies occurring in relation to that. Yep. How has the conduct of that under a Marshall Liberal government, have you felt comfortable with the way those marches have been able to operate, or has it been a little harder than you would have expected?
It's been, my feeling, because I'm involved in the organisation of those marches, and my feeling is that they're putting more scrutiny onto those marches than they are on anything else. You've seen, there's been some protests that have occurred in the last few years, the last couple of years since we've been in this, this pandemic, that have not had, COVID-safe plans and management plans. And yet this march has complied with that in intricate detail. It must have one of the most detailed COVID management plans you've ever seen. And it's still, going through the whole rigmarole over and over and over again. And I think there's an unfair scrutiny that's being placed on this march as opposed to anything else, even the cricket. I think, I'm sure Adelaide Oval's got a good COVID management plan, but I'm not sure that there's a lot of scrutiny on that plan. I'm not sure they're sending plainclothes policemen into the cricket to make sure people are complying like they did to our march last year.
So why is the government, and government bodies taking such a strong interest in heavily policing pro-life marches, but maybe not, say, Black Lives Matter's protest might be one you're referring to in a year or so ago?
Yeah, correct. Well, look, I think you'll find it's just they're ideologically opposed. The bureaucracy is largely, of a view about these social issues. They are generally in favour of abortion, generally in favour of euthanasia and all these things. And they are, in a small way, they're sort of activist about it. They see it as part of their duty is to stop opposition forces. Even when we registered, we attempted to register the Walk for Life company as a charitable not-for-profit, and even that was resisted because they didn't think we should be resisting, or their view was that we weren't serving a public good by arguing against deregulation of abortion. And so they took an ideological view about what was right and wrong for us to discuss, and whether we therefore could or could not be a charitable non-government, a not-for-profit. So there's this institutionalised view in the bureaucracy about how we should and shouldn't think, and that's having an effect on the way we, as a party, and Walk for Life as a group of people organising this Walk for Life every year, and as individuals, as Christians, it's how we operate. We're running into increasing resistance, and this is part of the reason why we decided to reform Family First, was because there's this increasing pressure on Christians and people of those sort of social conservative views, and trying to crowd them out of the public square, trying to push them out and prevent them from being involved. And of course, we have a right to be involved, just like anyone else.
Now, you've got a different focus where you say you're focusing on, preferencing and running in seats to influence the people who get elected in seats. But if they start going against your position on a socially conservative bent, you've sort of stuck with those MPs for 4 years. I guess your case is also that you'd want to be a cop on the beat in the upper house if you get the chance to, hold them more accountable than you can at a ballot box through the Legislative Council process. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, if we do our job well, looking at the lower house seats, it should flow through to, helping us win an upper house seat. And by doing that, exactly as you said, we're able to monitor how people are voting and what they're doing, and we're able to keep the pressure on them. And look, the important thing here is that we give people a chance, and where they vote well and where they do the right thing, then they're rewarded. And if they do the wrong thing, then they're punished. Right? And that's where we just can't keep supporting people because of their party. Like the time of supporting one party over another because it's more likely to be conservative is long gone. I mean, just as a sort of a thought exercise, Ricky, have a think about this, right? If you didn't know who was in government at the moment, and I said to you, look, debt has tripled, government spending has risen dramatically. There's massive intervention in the economy in forms of regulation about what people can and can't do in their homes and in their own property and on their own businesses. There's been abortion to birth legislated. There's been euthanasia legislated. Who would you say was in power? Right? And most people would think that would be a Labor Party government that would do that, right? Which is fair. But a Liberal government in power at the moment, and all of those things have happened. And so you've got to ask yourself, what's the difference? Like, why does it matter who's in government in a way? Because we're not seeing any great difference ideologically from the two of them. You know, you have to say that the Liberal Party has moved dramatically to the left. The Labor Party has always, of course, been on the left. The Greens have even way out on the left. So who's the centre-right party? Who's out there, representing that sort of sensible centre of people who want, responsible government spending? They want responsible levels of debt, preferably lower. They don't want debt tripled in the space of 4 years. They don't, people want to be able to know that when the government is spending money, they're spending it on things like new ambulances that we desperately need, rather than a whole bunch of infrastructure that there's not necessarily a great argument for. So we've got to see a return to sort of sensible government, to that centre-right government where people take economic management seriously, where debt is regarded as generally, something to be wary of, useful at times, but generally something to be wary of. And these things are not being taken to heart at the moment. There's no party that is pushing these lines in the Parliament at the moment.
Now, I spoke with Jack Snelling. I think he's the chair of your organisation. He's not running for office himself, but he flagged religious freedom as a major concern. Do you feel that the state government or its operatives in the bureaucracy have been a bit more heavy-handed towards people of faith and churches when it comes to COVID restrictions than other types of events?
Yeah, I think they've been much happier to crack down on. I think they've been much happier to crack down on religious services, for instance, than sporting fixtures. So, you go to a sporting fixture at Adelaide Oval, and you're required to wear a mask walking in and out and going to the bar and everything else. But as soon as you get down in your seat, you can scream your heart out, like take your mask off and go your hardest. And at the moment, they're worried about us singing in churches, and we're all wearing masks, and they're still worried about it. They don't want. It's just things like that. The level of disproportionate response. That sport seems to be getting a free pass, while religion seems to be getting held back a little bit harder. When there's no evidence that I can see that that religious events or services are any more likely to cause a transmission than any other form of event.
Well, Tom, there's a lot of that sort of conversation we've still got to have, I suspect, but I'm running out of time. If people want more information about Family First Mark II, or whatever you want to call it, where do you find that information?
Just call it Family First, Ricky. Yep. It's not the same faces, but, what party stays the same over all those same years? Things change, and we've come in and we've revitalised it, and we're very happy to be part of it. And if people want to know more about it, they can go to familyfirstparty.org.au.
All right, Tom Kenyon, thanks very much for your time today.
Good on you. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.